tidyR is a package that is used to change the structure of data after reading the data in. The first thing to know is what is considered tidy data according to the tidyR and tidyverse framework. Well, tidy data is data that is considered where each variable has its own separate column and each observation is in its own row. This means that column names indicate separate variables and row values indicate separate observations. Think of this as one might think of an Excel spreadsheet or a table that one might find in a database. So what are some structures of data that one can find that one might need to reorganize? Well, there are two popular types of data structures, there are two popular ways in which data can get structured. One is known as wide form data, and one is known as long form data. In wide form data, we see in the first table we have 6 columns, where the first column is a state, and the second column is second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth columns are values of year, specifically associated with each state. That are specific values present in those year columns. One might often find data structured in this wide form, especially when data is coming from online sources, especially when one has some sort of longitudinal data that one is measuring. Long form data, on the other hand, is data where the structure of the data is long form data is data where the structure is such that the column headers represent variables. In the first case of wide form data, note that the column headers for the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth columns are actually year values, are values of year. The column headers in that case tell us nothing about what the specific value is in the cells underneath those year values. Long form data, on the other hand, restructures that data and specifies year as a separate column that has distinct values. Corresponding to those year values, you have a separate value column that one can modify if it represents something specific to be capturing the specific cell values associated with that year and the specific state. Long form data is the typical form that one might find in an Excel spreadsheet or in a database. So what does wide data look like? Well, at the location represented by that bit.ly link, we have some wide form data that we are storing in a data frame called wide data. This data is data about CO2 per capita with year columns and country columns. This wide form data can be restructured. To restructure this, we do a process called gathering. Gathering converts wide form data into long form data. When one wants to convert wide form data into long form data, one needs to specify the columns one wants to gather. One has to specify the columns one wants to take and make into rows. Specific columns that need to be converted into rows need to be specified. There are multiple ways to select the columns that one wants to convert into rows. In this case, I am specifying minus country. So I'm saying gather the wide data frame and remove and gather or convert all the columns other than the country column into rows, where the column names of those columns will be a key column called year, and the value will be the CO2 per capita for those corresponding values of year. In this case, I'm removing the country column from the transformation of wide form to long form. This is one way one can select columns, is by excluding columns together. Another way one can convert it to long form or gather is to specify the column positions. In this case, I am using the combine operator to indicate that I want to select columns 2 to 42 to actually gather. And again, the key is year and the value is CO2 per capita. In this case, the listed columns 2 to 42 are based on column positions. One can convert long form data back into wide form through a process known as spread. When one wants to do that, one has to specify the long form data and specifically the columns that one wants to convert from long form to wide form. One of the other features that tidyR package allows is to work with missing data. Missing values in your data can influence model building and calculation of aggregations and other summary statistics. And so it is important to understand what one can do with missing values in data. One option with missing values is to drop them and to straight away eliminate them from the analysis. One can do that by using the drop_NA function within the tidyR package. One has to specify the name of the data frame and the column from which one wants to eliminate the missing values. The other option is to replace them. One can replace missing values by specifying the data frame and the list of columns and what new values the missing values are going to be having. In addition to replacing missing values, one can also split cells that have multiple values using tidyR. One column can be split into multiple columns, and that is accomplished using the separate function. One has to specify the data frame name, the column name that one wants to split, and the separator, and the names of the new columns that are going to be created based on the separator. In addition to separating columns, one can also unite columns or unite cells that have different values. This way, we are combining columns into a single column. To accomplish that, one uses the unite function where we specify the data frame, the columns that one wants to combine, and the new column name. And if we have a separator, we can specify that or we can exclude that if needed.